born in a fishing village called Sandy Point in St. Kitts, very close to a bay called Palm Bay. And from Sandy Point you look up at the mountain. The English people call the mountain Mount Misery. Tahitian people, when they claimed independence, they renamed the mountain Mount Viamuiga. So I had a very colorful childhood, and strong images like the sea, the mountain, the people going up to cut sugarcane, all of those things. And then when I was 8 years old, we came to St. Thomas. And so my growing up was really between those two places. The lesson box is really written in the tradition of the storytelling of the Caribbean. And people would, elders in the society, whether they be your particular ancestors, whether they be your grandparents or aunts or uncles, or just older people who live in villages, they tell stories. And through these stories, they want children to learn things. And one of the primary lessons in the story was that things are not always as they appear. That's one. And then, of course, there are some other kinds of moral lessons like honesty and not taking things that don't belong to you, and how you interface with adults in your community, and just the whole question of these laws of life that children are encouraged to learn. Is a very important thing. We're trying to put together in an attractive, entertaining, engaging venue, and still how you're going to teach, through it. And so these two children, boy and girl, they live in a village and they go off on a little adventure, which is simply to get something for their parents. And along the way they encounter an object that isn't anybody's, it's just sitting there. And so the question is, are they going to remember? Are they going to remember the things that they've been told? And one of the important things to me about children, sometimes people who are adults kind of seem to forget that they were children. And you have to also consider children who are described sometimes as good, or children who are described as bad. And even the children who are good, the lessons that you try to teach them, sometimes they're tempted, sometimes they deviate from those lessons that you've tried to teach. And that doesn't make them bad, that just makes them human. And how do you allow them to think about transgressions like those, and how to correct them and how to still reinforce. And so they go off and they find this thing and debate between them and with their own consciences what to do. And of course a choice is made by one, and later that's encountered. And so we have the opportunity to teach the lessons about when this happens to you, what do you do? How do you deal with it? My writing initially was sharing those ideas about that upbringing with adults, with a wide reading audience, and then I wanted to share it with children because some of the most enduring lessons that you will take with you through life is what you learn, as children. And when I went to schools and engaged children in talking about the contents of the lesson box, I was just totally reassured that it was a good decision and a good choice, because children were hungry for literature with characters that reflected them and reflected the kinds of situations that they encounter and have to deal with, and help them to think about healthy attitudes about who they are. Not just that they might do a wrong thing or bad thing and they'll be labeled forever, but how do you learn and move on from bad experiences or negative experiences. Although this is my first children's book, I have written other stories for children, and I do intend to publish those as well, because everybody who has read the book, those who have bought it for their children, have been very encouraging about how they felt about the story. And imagine, this is a story that I wrote for children, but one teacher who told me that she encountered the book, she is a high school teacher. She teaches students in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And she read the book one day and she said, I have to share this book with my students. And she took it to her high school class. And she just told me about the level of conversation that those high school students had about the contents of the book. The lessons touch on things like dialect. The lessons touch on things about communal responsibility for the raising of children. It touches on lessons about the moral lessons about encountering things that don't belong to you. The lessons about punishment. There are at least about 12 of them. And I think, particularly considering the time we're in, where there's so many social issues that we need to address, I think people are very receptive and very responsive to literature, to anything in the arts and humanities that help to point people in the direction that makes for a healthier society.